Recently, we did a video on the top 10 alternative vacation destination spots in America in hopes of helping our viewers have a cheaper and better getaway. But this got us to wondering, with almost 9.2 million Americans flying internationally in 2022, are there similar alternative getaways around the world? Well, we're here to tell you that yes, there are. So today, we'll be looking at 10 of the best examples of alternatives to some of the most popular tourist and vacation spots in the world. Number 10. Holbox instead of Cancun. In 2022, 5.6 million Americans traveled to Cancun. Promises of beautifully blue beaches, spas, resorts, diving, every water sport imaginable, spelunking, and everything in between draws people to this Mexican getaway. For years now, Cancun has even been synonymous with spring break and partying. But some who go to Mexico and spend $1,000 per person for a week's stay genuinely want a getaway, as opposed to the largely commercialized spa and resort beachfront properties that are full of English-speaking drunk people. About 2 hours north of Cancun, off the northern tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, lies Isla Holbox, a true Mexican paradise. Though the island is very welcoming to tourists, they heavily restrict new development and tourist traps. This has created a modern paradise where vacationers can spend the daytime snorkeling with whale sharks and then use the same gear to snorkel through the bioluminescent waters at night. Unlike Cancun, Holbox remains entirely natural, and while the island may play home to hotels and resorts, they are generally more earthy and less flashy. Of course, no beach getaway would be complete without water sports either, and at Holbox one can find all of the same activities found in Cancun, only with much more open space. If you've been thinking about a Mexican beach getaway this summer, ignore the obvious choice and take the boat less traveled, because Isla Holbox won't disappoint. Number 9. Seoul instead of Tokyo. For years now, visitors from all over the world have flocked to the Japanese megacity of Tokyo, a sprawling metropolis that draws weebs, businessmen, history buffs, and nature lovers alike. Tokyo is by far the most visited city in Japan and one of the most visited in all of Asia. The Shibuya Scramble Crossing has been featured in popular cinema for years, including hosting the not-so-permanent death of Han in the Fast and Furious franchise. Even the recent Hollywood blockbuster Bullet Train took its name from a staple of modern Tokyo culture, not to mention featuring the gorgeous Mount Fuji in the shots. Yet, for some, crowded shopping areas, packed bullet trains, and a tourist market that has been increasing its prices exponentially in recent years have made many decide to look elsewhere for an Asian getaway. And where better than the capital of South Korea? Rising in popularity with Westerners in recent years, Seoul has turned itself into a cultural powerhouse to match Hollywood. Today, names like PSY and BTS are as popular as Jason Derulo or Eminem, while K-pop star CL was even featured in the FX show Dave when star Lil Dicky traveled to the South Korean capital. Historians in Seoul can find a number of sites like the Gyeongbokgung Palace, which dates back to 1395 and was home to the kings of the Joseon dynasty. Alternatively, the National Museum of Korea plays home to over 12,000 artifacts that date back to the medieval era. Neighborhoods in Seoul range from neon-lit alleys reminiscent of Hong Kong to historically protected Buddhist sites, of which around 20% of the population are practitioners. No matter your travel needs, Seoul has you covered, and unlike Tokyo, whose prices have risen in recent years in lieu of tourism, those visiting South Korea's capital can find a nightly stay and a full belly without draining their wallet. Number 8. Algeria instead of Rome. Once the seat of the most renowned empire in history, Rome is one of the most visited cities in Europe and houses everything one could want for a vacation getaway. The Mediterranean Sea, Roman ruins, the Vatican, and everything in between are found in the ancient city, which has survived the rise and fall of multiple empires, revolutions, and renaissances. And that's to say nothing of the rest of Italy, whose contributions to history, the arts, and world culture are innumerable. But when spending thousands on a family vacation, especially for the history lovers amongst us, who doesn't want that money to go further? And in Algeria, it does. This North African nation lies just southwest of Italy, though not by much. And while it has much less coastline than its neighbor, there are still around 620 miles of Mediterranean beaches for travelers, despite playing home to about 90% of the Sahara Desert. With cultural influences from the Phoenicians, Arabs, French, Ottomans, and others, Algerian food is some of the most unique and delicious in the world. Those same influences are also apparent in the local architecture, music, and and even dances, as can be seen through the Bedouin and Kabyle dancers. But as for those who want a historical Roman getaway, let us not forget the far reach that the Roman Empire had. Among the cities they had throughout Europe, the Romans expanded well into Africa, building cities whose ruins are still part of the local tourism of Algeria today, primarily in the brilliantly preserved ruins of Thamugadi, which was founded in 100 CE by Emperor Trajan. Truly, whether wanting a Mediterranean vacation or a historical exploration, Algeria is a perfect alternative to Rome. Number 7. Edinburgh instead of London. People from all over the world travel to London in the millions, both as tourists and for business, using their free time to travel from Trafalgar Square to see the Tower of London, Buckingham Palace, Abbey Road, and the British Museum. But a trip to London can get pricey, especially when staying in the higher-end hotels and getting your fish and chips at the finest dining establishments. Instead, due north is the equally historic and beautiful city of Edinburgh, Scotland's capital, which will leave your jaw as agape as London would, albeit without emptying your pockets quite so much. While there are ancient Roman ruins and medieval architecture to be found in London, Edinburgh is like stepping through history, no matter where in the city you are. Cobblestone roads line the Royal Mile, while ancient fortresses like Edinburgh Castle or Lauriston Castle will leave you feeling like a knight preparing for battle. And while London has a history of producing amazing contributions to literature, such as the works of George Orwell, Jane Austen, and Charles Dickens, Scotland's capital also has an extensive history of literature, as found at the Writers' Museum. But that's not all. Harry Potter lovers the world over can bask in the free Potter Trail, which takes tourists to all of the most famous destinations that inspired the greatest piece of fiction in history. Though if none of these suits your fancy, Edinburgh's nightlife and pub scene are easily comparable to London's in everything except affordability, of which the former most definitely wins. Number 6. Montreal instead of Paris. Paris has long been known as the city of love. Couples from all over the world, to say nothing of singles and families, have traveled to France just to spend a week exploring the Louvre, the catacombs, the Eiffel Tower, the Notre Dame Cathedral, and everything else that the impressively gorgeous city has amassed since the 3rd century BCE. Between the landmarks, the amazing food, the rich history, and the sheer romanticism, Paris has become both one of the most culturally important cities globally and the most visited. Despite this, a trip to Paris isn't cheap, often setting a family back thousands of dollars, even when they try to budget their trip. Culture isn't cheap after all, but it could be cheaper. For American travelers, a trip to Quebec is a lot cheaper than a trip to France, and much of the culture found in Paris can be found in its North American counterpart of Montreal. A city founded by the French, Montreal plays home to its own Notre Dame Basilica, a more welcoming underground city, complete with shopping centers, restaurants, and cobblestone roads that are lined with cafes reminiscent of Paris. Of course, no city as old as Montreal would be complete without a number of museums, of which there is an abundance, such as the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts for the culturally adept among us. Whether wanting Parisian architecture, food, or culture, Montreal can fulfill all of your needs without the costs of a European getaway. Number 5. Slovenia instead of Switzerland. Switzerland has long since been a dream destination for many people. Between its world-renowned ski slopes, chocolate making, and cheese, the entire nation has become synonymous with class and elegance. But a trip to this beautiful country can also come accompanied by an insane price tag that will take years to save up for or pay back. For a 2-person getaway for a week, a trip to Switzerland can cost an average of $4,000, and that's not taking into consideration any special ski trips or expensive nights out. But if you're looking for an adventurous European getaway that's full of skiing and other intense activities, why not look due east to a quaint yet insanely gorgeous country that is often all but forgotten. Sitting in Central Europe, in the northwestern corner of the Balkans, lies the country of Slovenia, a country whose extracurricular activities often far exceed its famous Western counterpart. Slovenia is a culturally diverse land, steeped in history and natural beauty. Whether you decide to go skiing in the Julian Alps, bungee jumping off of the Bridge Solcan, spelunking in one of the 22 open cave systems, or kayaking through the river Soka, the country genuinely has an activity for every outdoor lover looking for a heart-pumping vacation. Of course, a country as historically rich as Slovenia is also full of medieval castles and architecture to explore. But if you're looking to have a Switzerland-like getaway at a fraction of the cost, Slovenia is is the destination for you. Number 4. Budapest instead of Vienna. Of all European cities, few have as much sophistication, elegance, and grandeur as Vienna. The capital of Hungary was once the capital of a much larger realm, housing the seat of the Holy Roman, Austrian, and Austro-Hungarian empires throughout history. Thanks to this regal history, the city has also been a breeding ground for brilliant minds like Mozart, Beethoven, and Freud, to say nothing of the multiple organizations which choose to call the city of music home. Now, tourists from the world over flock to Vienna to catch an authentic piece played in the same buildings which housed the artists centuries ago. The historical churches, artwork, and Danube River will leave tourists coming back for more, albeit to a sometimes crowded and overpriced scene. Alternatively, if you follow the Danube River southeast for about 150 miles, you will eventually come upon an equally impressive capital through which the body of water also flows. The capital of Austria was uniquely created in 1873 when 3 different towns on the riverbanks, Buda, Óbuda, and Pest, joined together to form one city, Budapest. What resulted was a beautifully historic European city full of castles from the formerly separate towns, gorgeous medieval architecture, theaters, and opera houses to rival Vienna, thermal baths, and just about anything else one could want on a vacation. The Budapest Wine Festival is even open to the public for a reasonable price and is hosted annually at Buda Castle. No matter your European travel needs, Budapest is a city that can offer a great vacation at a fraction of the price. Number 3. Tikal instead of Chichen Itza. Though the Mayans have long been accredited as a lost civilization, it's more believed that economic and environmental hardships caused the civilization to fall into a decline before its population dispersed and integrated into other cultures of the surrounding areas. Either way though, the ruins they left behind at Chichen Itza are some of the most brilliantly designed, preserved, and now visited in all of the world. One visit to this once bustling metropolis will leave you stunned as you see the Temple of the Warriors, El Castillo, and the Great Ball Court firsthand. At the height of its peak, it's estimated that as many as 50,000 Mayans lived in Chichen Itza, and today it's one of the most visited historical sites in the Americas. But while many history lovers jump at any opportunity to see the historical ruins of a civilization long gone, the sheer traffic at the heavier sites like Chichen Itza is enough to pull many out of the immersion and leave them annoyed. But due south at the Tikal National Park in Guatemala lies an even larger Mayan ruin, whose population is expected to have doubled that of Chichen Itza and even reached as many as 500,000 residents when its outlying regions are considered. The site, which plays home to over 3,000 buildings, can boast of temples, courtyards, causeways, bridges, civic centers, and more. Anyone who wants to view traditional Mayan writing, pottery making, and intricately decorated stelae can do so at Tikal too. Everything that one could expect from an ancient Mayan city can be found in abundance at Tikal, without the added caveat of an overcrowded area such as they would find at its northern counterpart. Number 2. Lombok instead of Bali. Off the coast of Southeast Asia lies around 17,500 islands that make up the Republic of Indonesia. These culturally diverse islands have become a famous tourist destination for many looking for an island getaway. Among those is the mountainous island of Bali, off the eastern coast of Java, which has become the epitome of Asian island vacations, complete with gorgeous Hindu temples, surfing, iconic rice fields, exquisite food, and even a natural water slide at the Aling Aling waterfall. But all of this amazing tropical scenery and fame may be a bit too pricey for tourists. The average cost of a trip for two to Bali for 1 week will run visitors an average of $1,200, though this isn't considering any extracurricular activities that can be found on Bali. But of those more than 17,500 islands, there are more affordable options that offer all the same amenities and oftentimes with much less congestion, as one would see on the more popular islands at Bali. One of these is Lombok, to which a similar trip would cost under $800, leaving more room in your budget for added fun. One trip to Lombok will give a person the same views of rice paddies, beaches, temples, palm trees, and anything else you could hope to find in Bali. The island even features an active volcano, Mount Rinjani, perfect for those clever vacation family photos. And all of this comes at a fraction of the price one would pay on the island's more famous counterpart. Number 1. Halkidiki instead of Mykonos. When archaeological interest on the island of DELOS in Greece majorly took off in the 1920s, the island of Mykonos nearly became a hub for both tourists and archaeologists needing a base for their explorations. But when legendary President John F. Kennedy's widow, Jackie O, visited the island with her second husband, Aristotle Onassis, followed by other high-profile names, it truly became a vacation oasis, complete with classy eating establishments and all the designer brand names to shop through. Today, over 500,000 visitors per year travel to the small island, whose year-round population barely reaches 10,000 residents. While the beaches, scenery, mythology, and history behind the island are always enthralling, the sheer overabundance of tourists is enough to turn many off of Mykonos. Meanwhile, on mainland Macedonia, Greece, northwest of Mykonos, lies a beautiful peninsula called Halkidiki, or Chalcidice, or Chalkidiki, whose three prongs jut out into the Aegean Sea, reminding all who arrive of the trident of the god Poseidon. While most visitors to Halkidiki will end up staying on the westernmost leg of Cassandra, which is full of beach resorts, it's the easternmost leg of Mount Athos that really stands out to history and beach lovers alike. Mount Athos alone is home to 61 beaches and 20 Christian monasteries. Meanwhile, the middle leg of Sithonia is usually a nice, quiet middle ground between the resort lifestyle and the history buffs. No matter whether you're into mountains, beaches, historical landmarks, or nice European vacation spots, Halkidiki has everything one could ever ask for.